This is your final warning. If you don't want flour all over you, turn it to low. So it was 56 degrees this morning, and fall weather won't stop teasing me. This has been the first cold morning of the season, and it makes me want to put on a cozy cardigan and make some warm, soothing ginger cake. I know it's going to be like 85 degrees this afternoon, but whatever. I can dream. Either way, sweater weather is right around the corner, so ginger cake is on the menu for today. This recipe comes courtesy of King Arthur Baking. They have tons of wonderful recipes, so I get a lot of my inspiration from them. This ginger cake perfectly hits all those traditional fall and winter holiday flavor notes. Packed full of spice, this moist cake isn't a very difficult bake, and with a pretty bundt pan, it can make it look even more holiday-ish. I'll even show you a super simple way to decorate this cake, which works perfect for people like me who suck at decorating cakes. Now, the very first thing I did was bring the cold ingredients up to room temperature. The unsalted butter, eggs, and water need to be room temperature before mixing in with the remaining ingredients. This generally takes about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the temperature of your home. Next, I'm going to preheat my oven to 350 degrees. The next thing I'm going to do is spray my bundt pan with cooking spray. Your pan doesn't have to be as intricate as this. I just really love this one because it's got these nice, pretty fall leaves on it, so that's what I'm going to use today. Any bundt pan will work fine, but since I'm craving fall weather, I think this one fits the mold. And now I'm going to need a flour-based cooking spray, which is what I use for cakes. I don't use it for bread because it adds too much flour. I don't want any extra flour on my breads, but I do want a flour coating for cakes. I'm just going to spray it pretty generously, and then I'm going to take a silicone brush and just brush it. I brush the inside of it and make sure that I'm getting in all those nice little cracks and crevices and going up the center tube. We want this well coated in cooking spray because one of the things that happens when we bake cakes is inevitably, sometimes they stick. You can prevent that by making sure that you have a lot of really good cooking spray coating your pan. I've tried many things over the years to prevent sticking. A lot of people say butter it, some say flour, butter, and sugar. I've even heard of something called cake goop. I've never used that, but I can tell you that none of those other methods have ever worked for me, as well as just baking spray. So now that it's coated, I'm going to set it aside. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is measure out 2.5 cups or 398 grams of all-purpose flour. To that, I'm going to add some gingerbread spice. If you can't find gingerbread spice, you can actually make it yourself, which is actually what I prefer to do. At least I know what's going into it. Gingerbread spice is 2.5 teaspoons of ground ginger, 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of nutmeg, 1/2 teaspoon of ground cloves, and 1/2 teaspoon of Jamaican allspice. So now I'm going to add the gingerbread spice to my all-purpose flour. Okay, next to that I'm going to add 1/2 teaspoon of salt, just regular old white table salt. Also add 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Be sure to give that a good whisk. Make sure all those are incorporated, especially the spices. This is a really spicy flavored cake. We go through a lot of this in the cold season in my house. It's just one of my favorite things to make. Alright, so take your really delicious spicy flour and set that aside. We're done with that for now. Next we're going to do is get a mixing bowl, and we will need a beater attachment today. Okay, what I want to show you is that cake is not scary. You just do things in a certain order. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is put 12 tablespoons, which is 170 grams or a stick and a half of room temperature unsalted butter in the bowl of my stand mixer, followed by 1.5 cups or 309 grams of packed light brown sugar. This recipe is generally considered pretty healthy as it provides a happy mental state and helps you sleep better after eating it. Anyway, the first step of this cake is called the creamy method. Okay, so what I'm going to do is start mixing this on low until the butter has broken up. If you just turn it on full whack to begin with, it's not going to work. It's just going to spray brown sugar all over the kitchen, which obviously isn't fun for anyone. And then what I'm going to do is turn up the speed to about 4 or 6. What I'm looking for is the butter and the sugar to come together. I want it to get nice and creamy, and then it'll get light and fluffy, and it will change color. It'll get a lot lighter in color. That's what we're looking for. So it's getting there, but it's not quite ready. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to scrape down the bowl, and you'll see me do this several times throughout the bake. I'm going to stop the mixer, and I'm going to scrape down the bowl to move all that sugar and butter back towards the middle and then turn it back on. I have the mixer on about level 6 right now. I know it's almost there because there's actually like a fluffy ring around the top of the bowl. Alright, so now I'm going to add the eggs one at a time. We'll see if I can manage this because yesterday I accidentally dumped both of them in at the same time. You want to let the egg get fully incorporated before you add the next one. Turn the mixer to stir and add 1 egg. Turn it up to 2 and let it incorporate. Now turn it up to 4. You'll know when the egg is incorporated because you won't see any more yellow swirling around the bowl. And then you add the next egg and you let it fully incorporate. Once both eggs are fully incorporated, you will add in the molasses. This is half a cup, or 170 grams, of molasses. So funny story, one of the first times I was making this cake with my mom, my brother came in the room and we were all sitting there just like talking to each other while the cake was being made. There was a lull in the conversation, it got quiet for a minute, and then one of us, and I can't remember who, dropped the entire molasses cup into the bowl, and it made a lot of racket and clattering noises, and we all screamed like little girls. It was pretty funny. Also, if you're enjoying this video, please take a second to give it a like. I really appreciate it. All right, now that the molasses is in, I'm gonna scrape down the bowl again as we get ready to add in the dry ingredients in the water. This is really sticky and messy, and the batter looks split right now, but I promise you that it's not. It's perfectly fine. All right, so now everything is combined and we're getting ready to start adding in our dry ingredients in the water. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn the mixer back down to low. This is your final warning. If you don't want flour all over you, turn it to low. I have it set to stir on the KitchenAid. I'm gonna add in approximately 1/3 of the flour. Add it gently, don't just dump it all in there. Once all the dry flour has been picked up and you don't see any more white, you can add in the water. This is a cup of water, or 227 grams. I'm gonna put about half of the water in here. The batter looks like it's a little lumpy and kind of gross, but it's perfectly fine. I assure you it's supposed to look like this. Once again, very carefully, add in half of your remaining flour. Be gentle with it, don't drop it all in at once. You do need to alternate between putting the flour in and adding the water. Now we're gonna gently pour in the last of the water. I did that a bit too enthusiastically and splashed water on myself. That's all right. It's fine. Once all the water is incorporated, we will add the last bit of the flour and we will let that fully incorporate. You want to start with flour and end with flour. All right, all the flour has been incorporated, but as you can see, we still have flour on the top and around the sides of the bowl. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out a spatula, which I didn't forget to grab this time, go me, and I'm going to gently knock that down. Just scrape the bowl down again. If you notice, I'm being quite gentle with this batter. I'm not trying to beat it to heck. Just make sure you scrape down to the bottom of the bowl, because a lot of times stuff likes to hide out down there. Sugar and flour that hasn't been incorporated, that kind of stuff. There's no getting around the fact that this cake is messy. I have never not made a mess when making a cake, but then again, I'm naturally clumsy. I'm always bumping into things and dropping things and making a mess. All right, so I'm gonna give it one really last good stir with the mixer and then we'll be done. Okay, so let's get the beater off, and of course we can't forget the bundt pan. Sometimes I like to add just a little bit more spray than I think I need, just to make sure I'm getting down into the bottom of the pan. I'm using this pastry brush to get good coverage all over, especially around the middle piece. This will just make sure the cake doesn't stick and ruin the appearance. Now I'm gonna pour the batter into the bundt pan, nice and gentle, and I'm only gonna fill it up about 3/4 of the way. And now I'm gonna smooth out the edges and just kind of smooth out the top and make it pretty. All right, so now I'm gonna tap it on the countertop to release any bubbles that may be down in there. 3 good taps should do it. That's it. Final thing before it goes in the oven is I like to put this particular bundt pan on top of a sheet tray. So I like to put it on a flat sheet pan so that it sits flat and it's even and it rises perfectly. So into the oven it goes at 350 degrees for about 55 to 65 minutes, or until the cake is done and a cake tester comes out clean. So today it took exactly an hour, and I just want to make sure that it's done. I'm going to use a cake tester and it should come out clean. Yes, that looks nice. So now I'm gonna let it cool in the pan for 10 minutes, because what it's doing is it's still setting up. It's still kind of working on its structure, if you will. After 10 minutes, you want to turn it out. Make sure you're using pot holders because this guy's still pretty dang hot. Carefully turn it out on a wire rack to cool. This is always the scariest part for me. It's okay, just hold it tightly and very quickly just go for it. And gently release. You can see the beautiful imprint, and you can kind of see just how soft this cake is. It looks like a dense chocolate cake, but it's actually pretty light. So now you just need to let it cool off completely for about 3 hours. And then after the 3 hours is up, I'm going to show you how I simply decorate it. My method for decorating it is perfect for people who just aren't very good at, well, decorating cakes, like me. All right, so it's been about 3 hours and our cake is nice and cooled. I'm going to show you how to finish it. It's going to be very simple and just a very quick kind of way to, take it over the top a little bit, especially if you're not good at decorating. First, let me put it on a cake stand because that's just going to already add a little bit of elegance. The way you finish this cake, you could do like a whipped cream or a pumpkin spice whipped cream or gingerbread spice whipped cream, all the typical fall Starbucks flavors really. You could even do a little bit of like a royal icing glaze, but I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to do a little bit of powdered sugar over the top, just to kind of give it a little bit of a sweetness and make it look really pretty. So now all I'm going to do is just dust it with some powdered sugar. And what's crazy about it is it's actually going to kind of help those leaves sort of stand out a little bit. So there you have it. that's all we do. This is just a perfect, beautiful, simple ginger cake. If you enjoyed this bake, consider checking out some of my other videos, where I teach everything from cookies to sandwich bread. Thanks for watching. Until next time.